Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports, and a major turn of events yesterday. The Tush Push is here to stay.
Man.
Welcome into a Thursday edition of Birds 365. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Thursday morning, brother?
Doing well. Yeah, you got to give Jeffrey Lurie credit. All the Eagles do is win, and they found a way to win another one that everybody thought was going the other direction. And I think I don't think the Eagles thought walking into that meeting that the Tush Push was going to be banned by the NFL, and they end up carving out the necessary votes. 22, they needed 24 to pass it. So the Eagles kept that firewall that they had. But it was interesting. I was talking to you before we got on. I think they duped the NFL, man. I think they duped them. And they duped them. And I wrote about this on Sports Illustrated for anyone who wants to look at it. They made it about themselves. And by making it about one play, they were able to keep that firewall. Because if you go back to Palm Beach in the spring meeting, it was 16-16. I mentioned the poor wording of the proposal by Green Bay because it did target the Eagles. And the whole point of tabling it was to rework it, and it was a much broader piece of legislation. But I think if you look at everyone, and I'm not talking about fans, I'm talking about media people from Adam Schefter on down, and the owners themselves in the room with a piece of paper in front of them, with the broader legislation. Everyone looked at this as trying to ban one play. And that's why the Eagles won. Now, I tried to find out if they did that purposefully, if it was strategy. I don't think it was. But ultimately, it ended up that way. And what should have happened from the NFL's perspective, if they truly wanted to get it passed, and all indications are they did, Troy Vincent should have got up there, or Rich McKay should have gotten up there and said just one sentence. I just want to remind you, this is not only about the Tush Push, this is a broader piece of legislation. Bang. Maybe that would have, gotten people back on the issue, but they didn't do that. And credit to Jeffrey Lurie. Some interesting verbiage.
Weird, very interesting verbiage. We'll get into that.
To me, the funniest part I was telling Zander before I came on was Jed York telling him, yeah, dude, how long are you going to keep talking? Because we've all been in that situation with Jeffrey Lurie. When he gets going, man, he likes to talk. So, yeah, I mean, but from the Eagles' perspective, it's interesting. I think it galvanizes the fan base. I think it's a big win. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think but from a football perspective, I've said pretty consistently, I don't think it matters that much other than it's a successful play for them. I think you kind of saw it the day before when the players were talking, and Jordan Mailata, A.J. Brown specifically, and they take it as like, dude, we do a bunch of shit really well. It's like this isn't the reason we're successful. And I think from the coach's perspective, they're like, hey, we work harder at this than people think. It's not just a bunch of guys pushing. So it's an interesting dichotomy. I think the players look at it like, come on, we're freaking good. And I think the coaches look at it as, come on, we came up with this. And I think both sides are right, to be honest.
Well, the Tush Push is here to stay, baby. 22-10. John, the Eagles also beat the Packers in the playoffs 22-10. So there's a little bit of irony there.
Yeah, by the way, there was a lot of, and I found that out as well, a lot of reporting. Guys, the Packers didn't have much to do with this at all.
Well, we kind of mentioned this yesterday on the show where I was like, I wonder if they used them as kind of Trojan horse with no owner.
They did. They do this with issues. They did the same thing with the line. The lines have nothing to do with the seating proposal. Also, the NFL used them and partnered with them. They do this to see, and this is another problem with the NFL. There's many problems, but they do it to see the public's reaction to it. So Green Bay gets all the shit. If you go way back to the start when they were asking Matt LaFleur about it, he was like dumbfounded. He didn't even know.
Yeah.
You know? He's like, and even Mark Murphy's like, you know. So basically, they use these teams as proxies and then sort of see what happens. So for those angry at the Packers, you can be angry at the Packers. I don't care, but it really wasn't them. So, but I know that's too convenient, and I wrote the same thing. You know, it's hard not to write it. They lost 22-10. They lost 22-10 their rules proposal. So, you know, it makes sense. It's low-hanging fruit. But from all indications, the Packers weren't behind this. It was the NFL. And, you know, why they do things the way they do. I was talking about that yesterday with BLG, Brandon Lee Gouton. I don't know. But, you know, they're very concerned with the reaction, even though people have proven no matter what they do, they're not going anywhere. So I don't know why they're concerned about it, but they're concerned about it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. John, Jason Kelsey joined owner Jeffrey Lurie there yesterday and apparently gave an impassioned speech about the safety of the play. How much of an impact do you think Jason Kelsey had on keeping the tush push to stay in 2025?
Yeah, I don't think much. I mean, it was an interesting tweak, and I think, you know, some of the owners mentioned that it was nice to have a player in there for once, and maybe they'll do that in the future to get their thought process on rule changes on the field, rule changes, because it does make sense. But I don't think, you know, the guy who doesn't get mentioned is John Ferrari, who's the Eagles' assistant GM. He was in there as well. He's their sort of rules expert, their football operations guy. He was a big part of the what they tried to do. But I think obviously Kelsey, nobody knows who John is, but I just wanted to mention him because he's a big part of it. But for members thing, I was texting people all day yesterday. I think some, like I said, I think some of the owners were liked having that a player in there and getting that experience and value of that. But I didn't get a great feel that he shifted. Ultimately, I think they shifted like 3 votes, maybe 2 or 3
that was
votes.
enough. That was enough to get it
Well,
done.
that's what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's ultimately, but you know, you had certain guys like, and I don't have it was 9 other teams that joined the Eagles. I don't have the list in front of me. I can find it. You know, there's certain teams. I think San Francisco voted against it because Jed York saying, "Hey, wrap it up." You know,
right.
just putting up the Dave Chappelle sketch. Wrap it up. You know, some people were going to vote that way no matter what, but you know, you needed a firewall of 8, and they got to 10. And
here are the 10 teams that voted with the Eagles for the tush push. Mark them down, Eagles fans. I'm sure you'll be giving them less shit this year than other fan bases. Eagles 1, Ravens, Browns, Lions, Jaguars, Dolphins, Patriots, Saints, Kellen Moore, Jets, and Titans. So majority AFC teams, and then the Saints and the Lions join the Eagles on the NFC side. Those are your 10 teams, John, that voted for the pushing.
Yeah, and a lot of people, and it depends on, because I got some shit. Where's Shane Steichen? Where's Jonathan Gannon? Like, there's so much misreporting and misinformation on these rule changes. They're not voting, guys.
Yeah, it's just it's owners basically,
Yes,
right?
it's owners, and
I was
depending on the
wondering
owner.
who voted. No, this might be a sensitive subject, but I was wondering who voted for Indianapolis.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and we'll talk about that. Obviously, the passing of Jim Ersce yesterday,
and you know, it might be Ferrari for the Eagles, but the point is, it's not the coach.
Yeah, right. It's an organizational thing.
Yes,
a little bit deeper than the coach.
Yeah. So I think people don't understand that because if we're up to Shane Steichen, Jonathan Gannon, yeah, they would have voted with Nick Sirianni. It's not up to Nick Sirianni.
Well, I think
You
it's
know,
obvious too. Like Crowley says, so the head coach doesn't have any say, and I don't know if they have no say, but do you remember
no,
what Todd Bowles said about it a couple months ago at the other owners' meetings, or I forget where that was. Maybe it was at the coaches' summit. Todd Bowles was basically like, "We need to stop it. What are we talking about? Get rid of the play."
yeah,
And then the Bucs voted against it. So
yeah.
that's another indication of a coach who
All
didn't have
all
the same opinion.
organizations are a little like everybody's not the same. Some are going to listen to their head coaches more than others. Some are not going to listen to them at all. Some,
Right.
everybody's different, but coaches don't vote. So what they want, like, if Jeffrey Lurie said, you know what, I'm not going, and he sent Julian or whatever, and he just sent John out there, and he didn't feel like, and he thought this is a waste of my time. I'm not gonna try to stop him from doing it, and if he went that direction, um, you know, that's not up to Nick Sirianni. It's not up to Nick Sirianni. Nick can lobby him. Hey, go try, blah, 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 whatever. But coaches don't vote on these rule changes. It's owners or owners' proxies. And they're generally.
Yeah, I like what you said too. Certain coaches have more influence than other coaches.
Yeah,
It's not all cookie cutter thing.
yeah, it's a
I do
sliding
think,
scale.
for all the knock that we give Jerry Jones, I do think these are the moments where Jerry gives the information, whether he knows it or not. That
He
kind of
definitely knows it. He knows
yeah,
it.
well, I mean, yesterday he talks and he's like, any play that's out of the ordinary gets extra scrutiny because of the competition. This is Jerry Jones. That's the fun part of having these meetings. Here we are, the world champion is the main focus of the Tush Push, and here we are debating it, having to decide: am I really against the Tush Push, or do I just want Philadelphia to not have an edge? And I sit there and fight that too. And then he admits the offensive line prowess is impressive. So you can tell Jerry Jones was like, do I not like this play, or do I just want to stop the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yeah, I
Which
mean,
is an honest assessment.
I don't know why people dislike Jerry. Is phenomenal for information like that. I don't know how many people dislike him. I get it from the Cowboys Eagles perspective, the rivalry, but there you have it. He just an honest guy, Of course, he wants his team to win. But he points out what I've been saying, it's got more to do with the freaking offensive line and the quarterback than anything else. Now, the coaching staff doesn't like to hear that, like I said, but the Eagles are successful because they have good players and they have a good team. And the coaches are a big part of that. So I don't know why they get so butthurt over it. But, here's the reality. 48 times in 2024, 42 times in 2023, 39 times in 2022. What are we doing here? I can't tell you how many people said, including myself, because I've said it, but I say it in a branding standpoint. The Eagles' signature play. How could your signature play be from a real world perspective, not a branding perspective? You run it 48 times in 18 games.
I don't think it should be dumbed down like that. Like, I hear what you're saying from a macro, like it's not many times. It's a very small sample size of what the actual football is being played. But did you hear Ben Johnson's quote yesterday? And I was like, I get what he's saying, but that's
Ben's a weirdo.
Football's a game of inches, though.
Ben's a
football's
weirdo.
a game of inches, John.
No,
so
but
those
all
plays
I'm trying to say,
plays.
I'm not saying they're not. They're very important plays. I didn't say they weren't important plays. I'm just saying it's not a big part of what the Philadelphia Eagles do. They are good because they are good. And by the way, to get to 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, you got to get the 9 yards before that. I'm saying you and I've said this from the start. If it got removed from the game yesterday, I wouldn't have even altered slightly my expectations for the Eagles, even slightly. same freaking team. I've said it
Right.
consistently from the start. They're still going to be successful. It might look a little bit different in certain situations, but still going to be one of the best short yardage teams because of the offensive line and the quarterback. Wouldn't have altered it at all.
I do believe this, John. Had Jeffrey Lurie not pulled out the stops yesterday and gone the extra length that he did to go and present and get Jason Kelsey and John Ferrari and go through that process, I believe that the tush push would have been banned. I believe Jeffrey Lurie
I
helped
think
save this
that.
play.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah,
Yeah.
he deserves all the credit and more. Like I said, if he decided to say, all right, my yacht needs a little tuning and he's doing something else.
Not that he'd be doing the tuning on the yacht anyway.
No, but he's out in wherever. Yeah, I believe that he moved 2 or 3 teams with his wet dream speech, as it will forever be known.
Yeah, which we got to talk about. Let me bring up this chat. I do want to bring up Tyler Braswell, 22 to 10. He gives a super chat, $22.10 for in honor of the vote. Keep pushing forward.
Nice.
Thank you, Tyler Braswell. Appreciate it, brother. One of our great supporters here on JAKIB Sports is Tyler Braswell. We appreciate that super chat, brother. Brian Fleming, member for 7 months. He says, Fleming, somehow I knew, Brian Fleming, that you were going to come in with this today, and you did. How about Lurie talking about wet dreams in front of the owners and Troy Vincent having to tell him to lay off the corn?
Yeah, well, I'm with Jeffrey there. I'm like, come on. I mean, first of all, he's speaking extemporaneously.
It's just
and anybody who's
got it really is.
Well, it's weird, yeah. But sometimes you say shit on it, and sometimes I say shit. Sometimes you say shit.
We do a lot of content. Yeah, I say shit too. I get it.
And sometimes it goes down, and sometimes I'm making it. Ed, when we're at the press conferences the other day, made a "that's what she said" joke to me, and there's a bunch of girls in the room, and you go, "Oh shit!" You got to be careful. But I'm in the category of people need to stop being so damn sensitive. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not like one of the people that's saying, oh, you can't say that. But I just thought it was a weird thing to say.
Well, it's a weird path for his mind to take, but whatever. He's proud of the team, and he's proud of what they developed and what they were able to accomplish. And from their perspective, and I don't agree with them, but from their perspective, I get their perspective. They're like, everybody's against us, like the fan perspective, trying to remove the game because we're from the game because we're so successful at it. I get all that from the haters. Well, it depends on the day, because yesterday I said somebody said I worked for the team, and then today somebody said, well, McMullen wanted the tush push out of the game. First of all, I wanted pushing out of the game long before the tush push even existed. I thought it was stupid when they removed it in 2005.
My only knock on that take is just like, is pushing one of the real problems of the modern rules in the game? Like, all the rules that have changed from the 90s, the 80s, and you would know a lot more about this than I do, to now. A lot of them, many people argue the game is dumbed down and the game is lesser, or the game is not as physical today, or all the different things. Like, is pushing in that? I don't think it is.
Well, it wouldn't be at the top of my list. I got a litany of shit they've done to the defense.
There's a lot of rules here
before I get that. But as somebody who saw the game before it and after it, yeah, it's on the list. It's always been on my list. I don't like it. I've never liked it. I don't like the never-ending whistles. I think when forward momentum is stopped, the play should be over. And maybe part of that is that's the way I grew up. So people today grew up with pushing as part of the game, so they're entrenched in that mode. But I'm not. Right. I grew up in a different era where it was like, what the fuck? I mean, play's over. So I acknowledge that, but watching the aesthetics of the game pre and post, it was better back then. Now, there's a lot of other reasons though. And part of it is the dumbing down. Part of it is the lack of preparation. Those things are far more paramount to the lack of, the game being dumbed down and things like that. But I don't know how you fix that in today's era, because you have all the safety issues and blah, blah, blah. So I tend to focus on the things you can fix. And this is one, to me, you could have fixed. You should have never removed to begin with. And for me personally, it far predated, like I said, the Tush Push even existing. But
yeah, but boy, the Eagles did a good job at swallowing up the narrative, John, because like
they
you
did
said
a
at the start of the
phenomenal
show,
job.
nobody, not Adam, not Rappaport, not nobody,
not the
talked
owners
about this.
voting,
Yes,
not Jerry
nobody
Jones
talked about pushing being removed from the game. It
Yeah.
was all about the Philadelphia Eagles Tush Push. That's what it
Yep.
was about, and it's that's a good job by the Eagles to control that narrative and ultimately get the votes. 22-10. The Tush Push is here to stay, everybody. I'm tired of calling it that. I wish we stuck with brotherly shove.
Jordan Mailata hates it. I call it the push play. Boring. But when I write about it, I try to. Now, sometimes you have to say Tush Push, but then I go back to push play because I hate
Well, it's
it.
clearly become the branding for the play now, especially now that the owners have voted on it as the Tush Push.
Yeah, and by the way,
they put up 26 minutes on YouTube, John, of 26 minutes of Tush Pushes is what they called it. Like they were trolling yesterday, the Eagles social media team.
Yeah, and that's fine. You can spike the football. I don't have a problem with that. But but one thing you said that I will correct you on, it's not here to stay. They can do whatever they want. They can bring it back next year. It's here for this season. Now, if something else happens, Frankie Lubu like,
they'll probably get rid of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've said ultimately, I don't know when, and I still say it. Ultimately, it's leaving. Now they'll probably need something else to happen to regenerate, and they'll probably do it better this time. Not start with the whole process. And again, you can read what I wrote on si.com. The whole process was flawed because of the way it started, which was clearly targeted at one play. And you can go back to our shows then. I said, there's no way that's going to pass. None. Zero. Because there's no way there's going to be 24 teams that are going to penalize one play.
Yeah,
and
you did call that. Yeah, and you called them switching the phrasing of it too. Maybe it was too late.
It was too late. It was too late in the process.
And by then, it would have been different.
By then, and I can only say that in hindsight because, as you said, and I looked 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 for one person to frame it other than a vote on the Tush Push, and anybody can throw it in the chat. I didn't find it. I did not find it. And that's not what they were voting on yesterday. But that's how it was. That's how everyone took it. And that was the brilliance of what Jeffrey Lurie did. And I don't even know if he did it on purpose because I tried to find that out. But if he did, it's even more brilliant. If he didn't, it's just, luck aligning because everybody bought it. But either way, it worked. And it's here. So you'll get to see him run it. Well, let's see. It's gone up from 39 to 42 to 48. So maybe they'll run it 50 times next season.
Yeah, let's see what they end up doing. We'll get to all the super chats on this topic. One other quick, I wanted to run by John in this opening segment, and then we'll get to all super chats on the Tush Push conversation. John, the Hard Knocks came out yesterday. They're doing the Bills training camp, but in season, they're doing the NFC East the entirety. Now, for those who remember or for those who watch Hard Knocks, John, I know you're not a big fan of the show, but last year it was the AFC. What was it? AFC North last year, I think, with the Ravens and the Steelers. So this year it's the NFC East. The Eagles will be featured. John, I mentioned you're not a fan of the show, but you got to tune in when the Eagles are on there, right?
Probably not.
Maybe not.
I'll watch it eventually, but I mean, I'm there. You know, that's number one. But yeah, I mean, I used to like Hard Knocks when it first started, but then
Yeah,
it became
crazy
so
good when it first started.
yeah, when it came so formulaic and they do the same thing over and over again, and I know how like, and specifically with the Eagles, I know how they're not going to let anything on there that they don't want on there. So it's very edited, it's very polished, it's very so from that standpoint, you know, but it'll be interesting for fans. They were on the Amazon show a couple years ago. I don't know if people remember that. I forget what Amazon calls their show.
Yeah, I'm blanking on it too. It was a good one though. That was that was the Super Bowl season, I believe, with Carson Wentz and Nick Foles.
Yeah, so I mean, it's always fun for the fans. With that show was basically a bunch of WIP.
All or nothing. That's what that
All
was
or
called.
nothing.
All or nothing. Yeah.
There's a bunch of WIP clips, and then they'd go into something in relation to them. And there's some interesting little tidbits. Like back then, I chuckled when, you know, how he had to get the darkest tint possible on his car so people wouldn't recognize him. Little stuff like that, but yeah, it'll be annoying for me because you have these giant cameras and the big scrums that are already a pain in the ass because of all the cameras. So, selfishly, I'm like, yeah, I don't, but fans will love it.
Yeah. Hard Knocks in season, everybody, will be the NFC East. It'll be Cowboys, Commanders, Eagles, and Giants all featured in that show. So that'll be pretty good, pretty interesting, at least for those who are football honks like myself and like to watch all the content during the season. I'm sure you'll be tuned into that. I think it's Tuesday nights or whenever it comes out. So we'll be tuned in for that. John, last piece of news I want to hit before we get to these super chats. Colts owner Jim Ersce passes away yesterday at 65 in his sleep. Rest in peace, obviously, to him. We'll pray for the repose of his soul and pray for his family. But your thoughts on Jim Ersce passing away yesterday? An interesting story, you know, passed away in his sleep. It was like a late afternoon sleep. He was tweeting in the morning about the Pacers. So I know Jim Ersce had his litany of problems, but he did have a great story coming up in the NFL. Your thoughts on Jim Ersce's passing?
Yeah, I mean, his final tweet was "Go Pacers." Good luck to Herb, the entire Pacers organization, and our city. I think our city's the biggest part, and that was a great game last night, by the way. Pacers came back to beat the Knicks for the basketball fans out there. But, you know, Jim Ersce is just, first of all, gone way too young, only 65, but
yeah,
like he's like a big deal in Indianapolis. I mean, like his impact on that community and that growing, and maybe like we're in a bigger city and you really can't have that kind of same imprint. But the one thing you'll see, whether it's Tony Dungy or Pat McAfee, I saw Pat, you know, throw out something that was really heartwarming, you know. He's a very eclectic guy, you know, musician, love music, not like a normal stuffy NFL owner.
Yeah,
Like,
no, very different. Agreed.
and he, yeah, he had some issues. He had some drug issues. He had some mental health issues, and he became a big, you know, supporter of mental health charities and things like that because he knew how important it was. But just all the charity, all the things he did for the city and everybody, even the people you have to fire because you have to fire coaches, and they all come back and they talk about, you know, what a wonderful boss he was. You know, we all wish we would have the outpouring that Jim Ersce had when we do go, because we all got to go at some point. But there aren't many owners who were as well liked personally as Jim Ersce. And I think that says a lot because most billionaires kind of lose touch. And he's like, he had sort of You never see a really rich guy with like an artistic mindset. That was sort of Jim Ersce. He's got his guitars. Just didn't fit in with that mentality of, again, the stuffy NFL owner billionaire.
Seemed to be a real lover of people too. I hear you. Some of the stories I read about him in terms of, the way he gives back, the way he helped the less fortunate, just all those things some of them were really moving to me. So I appreciate that stuff very much. And it certainly seems like he had a very good heart for, we all have problems, John. We all got skeletons in the closet, brother. That's the nature of the beast. So I know he had some of those, but definitely rest in peace to Jim Ersce, the Colts owner. I don't know, it might be too soon to ask this, but what happens there, John, with that? Does it just get passed? I'm sure it's in his will.
Yeah,
I would assume.
Yeah, I'm sure. Generally,
passes on to his kid.
Yeah, generally. I know one of his daughters, had been, sort of like Julian here. And I don't know how many kids he has, but I think
it was 3. I think he has 3 daughters.
And I know one started sort of going, around and trying to learn the business. So, but sometimes in these types of situations, the kids want to sell the asset because it's worth so much. So these are always situations you have to keep an eye on as far as what's going to happen with ownership. But yeah, obviously it's going to be the estate's asset to do with what it wants. And a lot of people, like, here that Julie and Laurie's, going to take over the Eagles at some point. But as far as how it's going to happen in Indianapolis, I don't have that information, but
yeah, we'll see how that happens there. Rest in peace to Jim Ersce. Died too soon, as Johnny Mac mentioned. So we'll pray for him, pray for his family. He did have 3 daughters, by the way. He has 10 grandchildren. So 65, man, it's just very young. So we'll pray for him. Good stuff there. Let's get to some super chats, John, on the Tush Push. We got a lot of them here. I appreciate everybody checking in this morning. Once again, I want to thank Tyler Braswell, the $22.10. I love that. 22-10, the Eagles beat the Packers in the playoffs. And then 22-10, they beat them in the Tush Push vote. And it continues. And John, I know you keep saying this was about pushing, but John, it really wasn't, because nobody talked about it.
No, I didn't. No, I said it should have been about pushing.
It should have. No, and they changed the wording for it to be that. But
I didn't
never
say it
got
was
to
about
that point.
Evidence by everyone who spoke, and please point out somebody, and if you found somebody pointing out that everybody talked like they were voting on the Tush Push. And they were never going to pass a resolution that was about one play. And they already spiked that, as I pointed out, in Florida. It should have been done. That was in the rearview mirror. The NFL handled this terribly. They already spiked that. And that's why they reworded and reworked the proposal to expand it. It was much broader. But nobody talked about that. And I don't think anybody voted on that.
I don't either. I think you're right. All right, let's get some supers. Next super chat is rated R. Okay, so if you don't want to hear it, mute me out for 20 seconds. Brian Pumper says, Lurie walked in, dropped his nuts on the table, dragged it across Roger's face, drank some whiskey, and then walked out the door. Wow. That is descriptive there, Brian Pumper.
I don't think Brian Pumper had a problem with the wet dream comment.
No, like he didn't. It sounds like it got him going a little bit, if anything.
Yeah. So, yeah. Jeffrey did a good job. Although I did chuckle when I was told that Jed York said, yeah, come on, speed it up. Because I've been in that.
Yeah.
I've been in that position. I'm like, come on, dude, speed it up.
Yeah, so for those who didn't see that, Jed York, the San Francisco 49ers owner, that was reported in the ESPN article. Jed York eventually said, are you going to keep talking here or what? Let me rant TV. Checks in with $5. Thank you, brother, for the super chat. And he says, do you think players are going to start faking injuries on the Tush Push next year, not out for the game, just getting shook up?
No, absolutely not.
Boy, what's WOPO mean? WOPO from Tacoma, Washington. So I assume you're from Tacoma, Washington. What's WOPO mean? Any idea?
No idea. No, nobody's faking injuries because of the Tush Push. I'm telling you guys, the players don't even care that much. They really don't. you know, they know how to stop it. How to stop it is not to let them get to 4th and 1. You know, make it 4th and 5. Then you don't have to worry about the tush push. Now, you know, the Eagles might go for it anyway and get it in a different conventional fashion. But, you know, the easiest way to stop the quarterback sneak with the Eagles and their offensive line, whether there's pushing involved or not, is don't get in short yardage in conversion situations. That's how you stop it. Players don't care. You know, you saw it with Jordan Mailata and AJ Brown when they thought it was going to be overturned. They're like, all right, we won't push. AJ's like, it's 1 yard. They don't care. Nobody's faking injuries.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I agree with that. How about speaking of the comment, the interesting comment that Jeffrey Lurie made? How about Troy Vincent standing up and kind of going right back at him?
Troy's, for those who don't know, Troy Vincent is number 2 in the NFL.
Right.
So Troy's got a lot of power, and Troy's now entrenched in a corporate mindset, in a ludicrously corporate mindset, I would argue. So, yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all.
No, I just thought it was funny that an owner got up and said something like that, and Troy Vincent had to address it like that. It's pretty funny to me that there's 32 billionaires in a room, and it's like classic locker room talk. Brian Garner checking in. What's up, Brian? Member for 7 months. Morning, fellas. Keep up the good work. Glad we can move on from this. We are going to be successful with or without the play. Agreed, Brian Garner. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, I've been saying that from day one. I don't think it changes the Eagles' trajectory at all. Maybe in a business sense, they get a little merchandising spike. And look, they're proud of the play. They should be proud of the play, and they're proud of what they've accomplished, and they should be proud of what they accomplished. But I'm talking from a pure football sense. I don't think it's going to have much impact either way, other than they're really good at it, and they'd be really good without it. It's not going to hurt them.
I think its impact is a little bigger than you state. I mean, you make it seem like it's like a regular running play. Come on, every time they have 1 yard to gain a first down, they use the play, and 90% of the time, or whatever it was last year, they convert. You know, that moves the sticks, that keeps you on the field. I think that's an impact.
Well, it's not 90% of the time they converted last year. Like, people have been gaslighted. It was 80 something. I get the number. And it was far less than the last time. I'm just saying. Now, there's a lot of context, which I always point out. A lot of the failures are offsides and guys jump, but because they're doing it and everybody's jumbling and everybody's trying to get the advantage, then you line up offsides or you jump a little bit early. You know, I'm saying, how many times you hear perfect? 85% ain't perfect.
No, but it's a good percentage, and over a 3-year sample size, they were obviously very successful in terms of converting on fourth.
Well,
I understand it wasn't. I understand it wasn't perfect, but it was close.
It was 92% with the conventional quarterback sneak in 2021.
Yeah, but different circumstances. They ran it in different circumstances. They ran it a different amount of times. I mean, those aren't completely apples to apples.
No, of course. I just said there's layers, there's context to everything. But what there isn't context to, great offensive line, great quarterback from a great quarterback sneak quarterback. Redundancy. That hasn't changed. So they're going to be successful with the tush push, and they're going to be successful with a regular quarterback sneak. Yeah, I don't think it has that big of an impact. Other than I do think there's a slight sort of, bully ball impact, put your, will on the other team. And that's a big part of what the Eagles do. So that part of it But I think from a pure football standpoint, I don't think it moves the needle that much.
Devin Shanahan checks in. He says, J-Mac, do you think the NFL will nerf the play via calling the play dead sooner than in previous years? I believe they will call the play differently. I could see that.
No, they're afraid. That's part of the problem. They let the whistle go too long. And other part of the problem too with the play is like everybody looks at Josh Allen and Buffalo because Buffalo was successful with the play. They were the second most successful team, and he didn't get it in the playoffs. But that's also the reason I don't like it, because there are times where the Eagles failed, but they didn't fail. And by that, I mean they got a bad spot. But they failed because they got a bad spot. And when you have all those bodies and you get a bad spot, there's not much you can do about it. They're not going to overturn it, because there's not going to be, in 90% of the cases, there's not going to be indisputable video evidence. But it's pretty clear to common sense that they missed the spot, like they missed the spot on Josh Allen. He got it. They got a bad spot. So I don't like that part of it either. And I think people don't bring that into the conversation. Whereas if you go back, and I've advocated they should have went back last year as it got, teams were paying too much attention, jumbling up the middle too much. I think then if you would have spread it out, it would have been even easier for you. We'll never know because they never did it. But 85.4% is the success rate since 2022. I am
curious to see if it looks a little different this year, not from the Eagles side, but from the side of the people who are trying to defend it.
Well, I think defending it, and when you had a great quarterback, sneak quarterback before the Tush Push, whoever it was, from Tom Brady on down, I always bring up Brad Johnson was phenomenal at it. There are certain quarterbacks really good at it. Jalen Hurts was really good at it in his first season as a starter. Carson Wentz was really good at it. So whomever, the same thing applies. That your conversion right then was 92%. So how do you stop it? Well, you stop it 8% of the time. But beyond that, you stop it by not getting into 3rd 1 and 4th and 1. That's how you stop it. If you have a good quarterback, sneak quarterback, and a good offensive line, as the Eagles do, it's a really effective play. There's no trick to stopping it. There's no figure it out, because I've heard a lot.
No, but I think you can muddy the waters. Like that's what Frankie Louvu did a good job at. Like they didn't just get beat on the play; he threw mud in the water. In a big way. I think you're going to see more of that. Maybe not in the same way that Louvu did.
If you go back to the Tampa game, they had trouble at the goal line, because they have Vita Bea. There's certain teams,
that are built to stop it better.
Yeah, and that, but as far as, even if you have Vita Bea, it's not like you're stopping a quarterback sneak in those instances like 50% of the time. It's still maybe 90% goes to 75%. You're still up against it because it's an easy play for the offense to convert if they have a good offensive line and they have a quarterback who can do it. And that's what the Eagles have.
Jason A-Team checks in. A-Team, appreciate the super chat, brother. He's $10. He says the NFL is by far a media monster. just like to they like to just put stuff out there just to get the crowd reaction and just for news, buzz, and clicks. People have been in a frenzy over this to a gaslighting point, as John's talked about many times. But he's right. I mean, they love this stuff, John. And in the offseason in May, and we've had 3 shows on Tush Push talking. People might be tired of it, but the NFL likes it.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if Roger Goodell wants it out of the game, because there were too many mistakes here to make me believe that they were gung-ho on getting it out of the game. So maybe they just did want the...
Right. You don't think it shows anything on Roger, does it? Like, typically Roger, when he makes his stance clear on what he wants in the game, he has typically gotten it.
You saw him backtrack. Yeah, that's why we all predicted they were going to get it, because typically when they table things, bring them back, they get it.
But you don't think it's a showing at all of maybe a decreasing power or a decreasing, authority amongst the owners for
no.
I don't think so either. I'm just throwing it out there.
Ultimately, the owners, Roger Goodell has no power over the owners. I mean, these are a bunch of, these are 32, like, the only guy who can tell Jeffrey Lurie to shut up is Jed York.
Right.
And the only guy who can walk in there and talk for 60 minutes about this kind of nonsense is Jeffrey Lurie.
Right. Good point.
It's
a big club and we ain't in it.
Roger Goodell works for them. Now, he's savvy and he steers them in the direction that he wants. And he's good at his job. And he knows how to facilitate that type of thing. Typically. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he works for them. One of the things that we're talking about yesterday was an extension for him. They have to approve that. They can fire him anytime they want. So he works for them, not the opposite.
And he's the highest paid guy in the NFL, including all quarterbacks. $64 million is his salary right now. So if he gets a new contract deal, it'll probably be even higher than that. So
I've always described Roger as the highest paid lightning rod on the planet, because his job is to take the shit that the owners don't want to take.
Yeah. Do you objectively, do you think Roger Goodell does a good job as the commissioner of the NFL?
Phenomenal job.
Yeah, me too.
Because his job,
I get a kick out of, like, I understand that it's fun to like boo him and everything, but there is not a commissioner in sports that is anywhere close to Roger Goodell. Not even close.
Well, part of the reason I say that, though, is because I know what his job is, and his job is to grow the game and grow the his job description and grow the sport as a whole. And I remember he brought this up when it was like it was probably it had just crossed 10 billion as a generating revenue per year. 10 billion. It had just crossed that. And he was talking about, eventually I want to get it to 25 billion. And I laughed. I said, is this guy insane? Like, they had already, even back then, they pretty much maxed out where they could go.
Right. It felt like a plateau was coming.
Yeah. But in North America, because how higher can these TV networks go? And they've gone incrementally up, but the increments for the most part. But he opened up all these other avenues, and they're at like 23, I think now. He's right there.
It's crazy.
He's right on the cusp. And that's his job description. And he has handled it beautifully. So that's why he's going to get an extension.
Yeah. No, he's done a great job. And then you have people like Twiz. Come on, Twiz. I could run the NFL and it would make money. Roger stinks. Okay, Twiz. I'm sure you could do the job that Roger Goodell does. Come on, Twizzler. Midnight Lexicon checks in $5 and he says, I don't like the idea that the NFL uses its historic franchises to test the waters of certain rule implementations. There will be many Luvus this year. Kind of a
no, there won't. No, there won't. You guys have been gaslighted. That's what we said. Nobody's faking injuries. Like, this has been built up in people's minds. Nobody's jumping off sides every play. They run it 50 times a year. Less usually. Most teams are going to give them a pass into the end zone. They're saying, well, we're screwed. It's not that big of a deal. It's been made up to
I
be this
guarantee
big deal.
the spotlight's going to be on the Tush Push even more so this year with all the happenings that have happened in the league.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. But I'm saying
this
the
has really
impact,
become an identity thing.
the impact of the play is just grossly overstated. Always has been, and will only be more so next year.
Good stuff there. Appreciate all of our super chats today from everybody in JAKIB Nation. The Tush Push is here to stay, and it's here to go on Birds 365. All right, I am done. All right, 50 minutes today on today's show. We're done. All right, if we get another super chat on it, we'll hit on it, obviously. But after today, good night. Good night, Tush Push conversation. The Eagles have it. It's here to stay.
I'll just say it again. My last thing. It's here for this season. After that, right, it's not necessarily here to stay.
We'll see what they end up doing on it next year. And that's a whole nother talking point for a whole nother episode of Birds 365.
Yeah.
So we'll save it for them. We appreciate everybody in the chat today. I got a good topic coming up out of the break I want to hit John with. All right. Top 10 Eagles that are important for the success this year. How do you grade them? I'm going to give John my 10 because I did this on the afternoon show the other day. I'm going to give John my 10, and then we'll run through his 10 of the top 10 most important Eagles for them to have success in 2025. So we'll do that list coming up next after the break. A couple other things we'll talk about here on Birds 365, and any super chats that we get, we will hit on as well. Appreciate you all being here. Hit that like button, and we'll be right back in 3 minutes on Birds 365.